The wind howls like a beast in the dark, tearing through the skeletal trees of the Ice Age. Snow stings the faces of a small band of humans huddled together, wrapped in layers of scavenged hides. One wrong move, one misjudged night, and they'll freeze before dawn. There are no heaters, no firewood stores, no backup plan. Just instinct, desperation, and an ancient knowledge of survival passed down through generations. How did they do it? How did early humans survive winters that would kill most of us in hours? What you're about to discover isn't just about survival. It's about ingenuity, resilience, and the brutal choices our ancestors had to make to live through a world that wanted them dead. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. During the Ice Age, winter didn't mean a few snowy days or chilly nights. It meant weeks, sometimes months, of bone-shattering cold where temperatures could plummet below -40 degrees Celsius. For early humans, especially those living in Eurasia or near glacial fronts, every day of winter was a battle for survival. And at the heart of that battle was one thing: fire. But fire didn't come easy. There were no lighters, no matches, not even dry wood on most days. Everything was frozen. The ground was hard as stone, and the trees were often covered in ice or too wet to catch a flame. So, how did they do it? Archaeological evidence tells us that early humans became masters of fire-preserving embers for days, even carrying them from camp to camp inside animal horns or hollowed bones packed with moss. They didn't just make fire. They protected it like it was alive, because without it, they were dead. And then came shelter. Imagine this. You're standing in an open, frozen plain. There's no forest to hide in, no buildings, no caves nearby. Just wind, snow, and predators. So what did early humans do? They built. Using mammoth bones, animal hides, mud, and snow, they created dome-like huts that functioned almost like natural igloos. In Ukraine, archaeologists discovered Ice Age shelters made entirely from mammoth bones' massive tusks arched into frames, with thick hides stretched over them for insulation. These weren't random piles of debris. They were engineered with purpose. The walls were layered, the entrances angled away from the wind. Inside, fires would burn in pits, with smoke funneling through tiny roof holes or drifting out through cracks. Even in the bitter cold, these structures could hold warmth, giving families a fighting chance. Fire and shelter weren't just tools. They were symbols of intelligence, of adaptation, of a species refusing to die. Every ember kept alive meant another night survived. Every bone dragged across the frozen steppe meant another wall to hold back death. And for early humans, there was no greater victory than seeing the sunrise after another impossible night. Warmth kept you alive, but food gave you the strength to keep going. And in the dead of winter, nothing was easy to find. Most animals migrated or hibernated. Plants? Gone. Berries, roots, anything edible? Buried under layers of snow and ice. So early humans had to turn to the one thing that could keep them alive: meat. Not just for calories, but for the precious fat it contained. Because when the cold drains your body heat by the hour, fat isn't just fuel, it's survival. That's why mammoths became more than just mythical beasts. They were lifelines. A single mammoth could feed a tribe for weeks, maybe months. But killing one? That took everything. These weren't slow, helpless animals. Mammoths were massive, up to 10 tons, covered in thick fur and dangerously strong. To take one down, hunters had to work together like a single organism. They used spears tipped with stone, carefully herding or trapping the beast, sometimes even driving it toward cliffs or into mud pits. The risk was enormous. One wrong move and a mammoth could crush you underfoot, but the reward was survival. Once downed, the mammoth was treated with near reverence. Every piece mattered. The meat was carved, fried, smoked, or buried in frozen ground to preserve it. The fat was rendered and stored, used for cooking, energy, or even as a kind of insulation when rubbed on skin. Bones were used for tools, shelter, and sometimes even fire fuel. Nothing was wasted. In fact, some evidence suggests early humans may have even followed herds, moving camps with the migrations, sensing their lives to the rhythms of these giants. But it wasn't just about the mammoths. Humans hunted reindeer, horses, muskox, and smaller game, too, anything they could find. Nets were woven from sinew to catch snow hares. Traps were built from stone and wood. Every calorie counted. And every hunt was a gamble against starvation. They also tapped into something else: cooperation. No one hunted alone. No one ate alone. Sharing was essential. If one group made a kill, others benefited. In this kind of cold, selfishness could mean the death of the whole group. So survival became communal. A mammoth fed not just a family, but an entire tribe. Around the fire, meat was passed, stories were told, bonds were strengthened. It wasn't just eating, it was life. But no matter how skilled the hunters were, or how well the fires burned, there came moments when nothing worked. The mammoths vanished, the traps came up empty, and the cold closed in like a vice. This was the brutal edge of Ice Age life, the moment where survival wasn't about skill anymore. It was about decisions, some of them impossible. Starvation wasn't rare. Entire bands could go days without food, forced to chew on bones, bark, or scraps of leather. And when all else failed, they moved. Migration was the last resort, but it could also be the only chance. With young children strapped to their backs, and whatever supplies they could carry, families would abandon shelters and walk for days across the ice fields in search of food or a warmer valley. Some made it, others didn't. The world didn't care. The cold didn't forgive. And then there's the part no one likes to imagine: the darker choices. In a few extreme cases, evidence suggests that some starving groups may have resorted to cannibalism not as a cultural practice, but as a desperate, horrifying act of survival. It's not the kind of story we want to tell about our ancestors, but it's real. It shows just how far the limits were pushed. When the snow never melted, and the animals disappeared, and the fire burned low, people had to decide how much they were willing to do to live through another sunrise. But alongside all the fear and suffering, there was something else, something remarkable. Early humans never gave up. They adapted. When one strategy failed, they found another. When the cold took their elders, the younger ones learned faster, moved smarter, and remembered everything. Knowledge became their greatest weapon, passed down in stories around the fire, carved into bones, painted onto cave walls. Lessons about hunting, about the stars, about how to find warmth in a frozen world. The Ice Age didn't just challenge humans. It shaped them. It forced them to evolve not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, socially. It made them tougher, smarter, more united. That's why we're here today. Because they didn't just survive, they endured the unthinkable. And in the silence of that frozen world, they lit fires that refused to die. What our ancestors endured wasn't just cold. It was a level of constant danger and discomfort that most of us can't even imagine. Every step outside their shelter could mean frostbite. Every missed hunt could mean death. And yet, they didn't just lie down and accept it. They rose, they built, they hunted, they adapted. And through that struggle, they laid the foundation for everything we are today. Think about it. If you're here, watching this video, it means someone in your bloodline survived those winters. Someone fought through starvation, hunted mammoths, guarded fire through the night, and made it through ice and darkness so you could exist. That's not just history, that's legacy. That's in your DNA. So the next time you step into the cold or complain about winter traffic or a broken heater, remember, your ancestors survived worse, far worse, without anything close to what we have now. And they did it not because they had to. but because they refused to quit. If this glimpse into the past made you feel something curious, inspired, maybe even a little humbled, then you're not alone. Hit that like button if you respect what ancient humans went through. And if you want to dive deeper into the raw, untold stories of early human survival, evolution, and life in the wild world before history, subscribe and join us. There's so much more to uncover. Your ancestors didn't just survive. They endured a world of frozen nightmares so you could live to remember them.